Introduction. Some of the greatest discoveries in history were never planned. A forgotten experiment, a simple mistake, or even pure chance has given the world inventions that changed our daily lives forever. From sweet treats to revolutionary materials, these accidents shape science, culture, and the way we live today. In this video, we'll uncover 15 incredible stories of inventions born entirely by accident. Coca-Cola. The story of Coca-Cola begins in the late 19th century, during a period in which pharmacies in the United States were filled with experimental mixtures that promised to ease pain, improve health, and offer relief from common ailments. John Stith Pemberton, a pharmacist from Atlanta, Georgia, worked tirelessly in his laboratory, combining different plant extracts, oils, and syrups in search of new medicinal formulas. Pemberton was not only an experienced chemist but also a man who had endured personal suffering. He had been wounded during the Civil War and relied on morphine to manage his chronic pain. This dependency inspired him to search for remedies that could replace his reliance on opiates and provide healthier relief. In 1886, Pemberton created a syrup unlike any of his previous attempts. It was dark in color, aromatic, and thick in consistency. His intention was not to invent a popular drink, but to develop a medicinal tonic that might ease headaches, calm the nerves, and provide energy. The syrup was originally mixed with alcohol and contained extracts from coca leaves, which gave it stimulating properties, and from the cola nut, which added both caffeine and a bitter flavor. Together, these ingredients inspired the eventual name, Coca-Cola. Soon after, Atlanta adopted strict local temperance laws that prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages. To adapt, Pemberton replaced the wine in his formula with carbonated water, which was becoming increasingly fashionable at the time. Carbonated drinks were believed to have health benefits, and many pharmacists used soda fountains to serve their mixtures. When the new syrup was blended with soda water, the result was unexpectedly pleasant. It was less a medicine and more a refreshing drink, with a flavor that people quickly grew to enjoy. Pemberton began selling his syrup to local soda fountains in Atlanta. For 5 cents a glass, customers could enjoy what was marketed as a temperance drink and intellectual beverage. Early advertisements emphasized its supposed health benefits, promising relief from exhaustion, headaches, and even more serious ailments. However, while these claims attracted some initial attention, what truly drove the growing popularity of the drink was its unique taste and the way it left customers feeling uplifted and refreshed. The turning point came when Pemberton partnered with Frank Mason Robinson, his bookkeeper. Robinson not only named the beverage Coca-Cola, but also designed its distinctive script logo, which is still recognized worldwide today. His marketing sense transformed the syrup from a small pharmacy product into a brand with identity and appeal. Despite this progress, Pemberton himself would not live to see the global empire his creation would become. In 1888, he died of illness, and ownership of his formula passed through several hands before landing with Asa Griggs Candler, an Atlanta businessman with a strong vision for expansion. Candler understood the potential of the drink not as a medicine but as a consumer product. He aggressively promoted it, distributing coupons for free samples, painting walls and store signs with its logo, and spreading its presence far beyond the city. By the turn of the 20th century, Coca-Cola had already become a household name in the United States. Its formula was closely guarded, its syrup manufactured in large quantities, and its distribution network expanding steadily. What had started as a pharmacist's experiment to find relief from pain had transformed, by a series of chance circumstances, into one of the most recognizable beverages in the world. The alcohol-free version came about only because of temperance laws. The combination with carbonated water happened because soda fountains were fashionable at the time, and its rise to popularity depended as much on Robinson's branding and Candler's marketing as it did on Pemberton's chemistry. None of this was part of the original plan. Today, Coca-Cola is consumed in nearly every country, and its red and white logo is one of the most familiar symbols across cultures. Its accidental beginnings remind us that innovation does not always follow intention. Sometimes, a search for medicine leads instead to the birth of a drink that becomes a global cultural phenomenon. Superglue. The history of superglue, one of the most recognizable adhesives in the world, began not as a planned search for a household product but as an incidental discovery during the development of military technology. In the early 1940s, the Second World War drove scientists and engineers to explore new materials for use in weapons, optics, and other equipment. Among them was Harry Coover, a chemist working for the Eastman Kodak Company. His team had been tasked with creating materials suitable for producing clear, durable plastic gun sights for weapons. The requirements were strict. The substance needed to be optically transparent, stable under different conditions, and strong enough to withstand mechanical stress. In 1942, Coover and his colleagues synthesized a group of compounds known as cyanoacrylates. These substances were highly reactive and possessed unusual bonding properties. At first, the chemists dismissed them. The problem was not their lack of adhesive strength, but rather the opposite. They bonded to almost everything they touched, including laboratory instruments and glass containers. This stickiness was seen as an obstacle, not a benefit. Since the material proved uncontrollable for their intended use in precision optics, the team abandoned it and continued to search for alternatives. The cyanoacrylates were noted in reports, but there was little interest in pursuing them further. Several years passed, and the compounds remained largely forgotten until Coover returned to them in the 1950s. By this time, he was working at a different laboratory, once again involved in research related to polymers and plastics. In 1951, during experiments with adhesives for industrial purposes, the properties of cyanoacrylates resurfaced. When the team attempted to test the refractive index of one of the samples, the monomer quickly spread across the surfaces of the prisms and bonded them tightly together. It was not a reversible bond, nor was it easy to clean. Instead of seeing this as a problem, Coover recognized its potential. What had been dismissed as too sticky in 1942 was, in fact, the essence of a new kind of adhesive. The strength of cyanoacrylate adhesive lies in its chemical behavior. The liquid monomers polymerize rapidly in the presence of trace amounts of moisture, which is nearly always present on surfaces and in the air. This reaction creates long chains that interlock across the materials being joined, forming a tight and durable bond within seconds. Unlike many adhesives of the time, which required heat, pressure, or long curing periods, cyanoacrylates acted almost instantly. The simplicity of use was remarkable. A drop of the substance applied to two surfaces could fix them together with little preparation and without special tools. By 1958, Eastman Kodak introduced the product commercially under the name Eastman No. 910, later marketed more widely as Super Glue. From the beginning, its unusual properties captured attention. Demonstrations showed two pieces of metal bonded so firmly that they could support significant weight, or an individual suspended in the air held only by a few drops of the adhesive. Such images emphasized the extraordinary power of the substance and fueled public interest. Super glue quickly moved beyond industrial applications. Its ability to bond a wide variety of materials, metal, glass, ceramics, wood, and plastics, made it appealing to households, workshops, and hobbyists. Unlike many earlier adhesives, it did not require mixing components or extended drying times. This convenience allowed people to repair broken objects quickly and effectively, reinforcing the impression that it was a tool of the modern age. The adhesive's strength and rapid setting time also led to unexpected uses in medicine. During the Vietnam War, field medics experimented with cyanoacrylates to close wounds temporarily on the battlefield. Although the early formulations were not designed for biological use and sometimes caused irritation, they could effectively stop bleeding and stabilize injured soldiers long enough to transport them to hospitals. Later research refined medical-grade versions of the adhesive, which are now widely used in surgery as alternatives or complements to traditional sutures. In this way, an accident in a laboratory not only produced a household tool but also contributed to saving lives. Despite its benefits, the discovery was never the result of a direct plan to revolutionize adhesives. It was a byproduct of other research, recognized only when the context changed. Coover himself often emphasized this point in later years, explaining that many breakthroughs depend on an ability to see value in what initially appears to be a failure or nuisance. The cyanoacrylates were not suitable for optical instruments, but their extraordinary bonding ability was undeniable when viewed from another perspective. Superglue went on to become a symbol of modern convenience and efficiency. It represented the idea that a simple chemical property, properly understood, could change everyday life. From small household repairs to industrial assembly, from hobbies to emergency medicine, its influence spread quietly but broadly. The adhesive required no elaborate explanation. Its effectiveness was evident in the instant it was applied. Today, cyanoacrylate adhesives are produced in countless varieties, adapted for specific materials and industries. Yet the origin of this technology remains the same. An accidental discovery during a time of war, initially rejected as unsuitable, and later embraced as one of the most versatile tools in modern chemistry. Superglue demonstrates how progress often depends less on following a fixed plan and more on recognizing opportunity in the unexpected. Stainless steel. The story of stainless steel begins in the early 20th century, when metallurgy was undergoing rapid transformation. Steel had long been valued for its strength and versatility, yet it suffered from one persistent weakness: corrosion. In humid air, in contact with water, or when exposed to chemicals, steel would rust, weakening its structure and limiting its applications. Engineers and scientists searched for solutions, but most efforts produced only partial improvements. Coatings could protect the surface for a time, and alloys with small additions of other elements could resist oxidation slightly better, but none of these approaches provided the durable, rust-free material that industry desired. In 1913, an English metallurgist named Harry Burleigh was working in Sheffield, a city already famous for its steel production. His task was not originally to solve the problem of rust but to improve the performance of gun barrels. Military authorities were concerned that the barrels of high-powered rifles and machine guns eroded quickly under intense heat and friction. Burleigh was asked to develop a steel that would resist wear and erosion inside the barrel, extending its service life. His approach involved experimenting with different alloy compositions, systematically adding varying amounts of elements to the iron-carbon base of steel. Among the many samples Burleigh prepared, one stood out, though not for the reason expected. It contained about 12 to 13% chromium, along with the usual iron and carbon. During tests, this steel did not show remarkable resistance to erosion under heat, but something unusual happened when the samples were left exposed to the air. Unlike other steels, which quickly developed patches of reddish-brown rust, these chromium-rich samples remained bright and untarnished. Weeks passed, and the surface still did not corrode. At first, Burleigh did not fully appreciate the significance of this property, as his primary focus remained on solving the problem of barrel erosion. But soon it became clear that what he had discovered was not merely another steel variant but a fundamentally different material. The secret lay in the chromium. When present in sufficient quantities, chromium reacts with oxygen in the environment to form a thin, invisible layer of chromium oxide on the steel's surface. This layer is passive, meaning it does not continue to react aggressively, yet it is strong enough to protect the underlying metal from further oxidation. If the surface is scratched or damaged, the chromium oxide film reforms quickly, maintaining the protective barrier. This self-healing property distinguished the new alloy from ordinary steel, which lacked such resilience. Burleigh began to explore potential applications of his discovery. Although his assignment had been military, he recognized that industries beyond weapons manufacturing could benefit from a steel that resisted rust. He approached manufacturers of cutlery in Sheffield, where rusting blades had long been a practical problem. Knives, forks, and spoons made of ordinary steel required constant polishing and often discolored with use, while silver cutlery was expensive. The new chromium steel offered an alternative: affordable utensils that would remain clean, shiny, and resistant to staining. Local manufacturers at first showed hesitation, but once samples were tested, interest grew. Soon, production of cutlery from this new material began, marking one of the first commercial uses of stainless steel. The recognition of stainless steel's importance spread quickly. By the 1920s, metallurgists in other countries, including Germany and the United States, were producing their own versions of chromium-based alloys, refining the balance of elements to suit different needs. Some formulations included nickel, which improved toughness and resistance to certain chemicals. Others varied the carbon content to enhance hardness or ease of shaping. These variations gave rise to families of stainless steels, each designed for specific applications. The impact on modern industry was profound. Stainless steel became indispensable in architecture, where its resistance to weathering allowed buildings, bridges, and monuments to maintain their appearance and strength for decades. In chemical plants, it enabled safe handling of acids and corrosive substances. In medicine, it provided hygienic, sterilizable instruments and implants. In transportation, it contributed to durable parts for ships, aircraft, and automobiles. Its combination of mechanical strength, resistance to rust, and aesthetic appeal transformed it into one of the most widely used materials of the 20th century. Yet the discovery of stainless steel was not the direct outcome of a deliberate search for rust-proof metal. Burley's assignment had been to solve a different problem altogether, and the key insight emerged only because he noticed an unusual property of one experimental sample. What might have been discarded as irrelevant to gun barrels became the foundation of a revolution in material science. Over the following decades, the production of stainless steel expanded worldwide, and its uses multiplied. Kitchen sinks, surgical tools, skyscraper exteriors, and countless other objects incorporated it, each relying on the accidental discovery in Sheffield. The alloy's enduring shine became a symbol of modernity, cleanliness, and durability. Today, stainless steel continues to evolve, with specialized grades designed for extreme environments such as deep-sea exploration, nuclear reactors, and spacecraft. Despite these advanced applications, its origin remains a reminder that innovation often depends on the ability to see beyond the immediate problem and recognize value in unexpected results. A project aimed at improving weapons led instead to a material that reshaped daily life, industry, and architecture. Stainless steel stands as proof that accidents, when observed with attention and curiosity, can change the world. Safety pin. The invention of the safety pin stands as an example of how a simple observation and a moment of practical improvisation can lead to an object that becomes part of daily life across the globe. Unlike complex discoveries in laboratories or large-scale industrial breakthroughs, this story is rooted in the ordinary and the personal, yet its outcomes spread far beyond its modest beginnings. The year was 1849, and an American mechanic named Walter Hunt was seeking a quick solution to a small but pressing problem. Hunt was known as a man of many ideas, a tinkerer who worked with mechanical devices, textiles, and domestic tools. He often devised solutions to everyday inconveniences, sometimes selling his patents cheaply to settle debts rather than developing them into large businesses. At that particular moment, Hunt owed a friend a small sum of money and was looking for a way to generate quick cash. He had in front of him a length of brass wire, and as he manipulated it in his hands, bending and twisting absent-mindedly, he began to shape a new kind of fastener. Straight pins had long been used in clothing and household tasks, but they presented a danger. Their sharp tips could prick the skin, and without a mechanism to cover the point, they were inconvenient and even unsafe, especially for use with children's garments or bandages. Hunt's experiment with the wire gave rise to a new form. A pin with a coiled spring at one end, a clasp to secure the point, and a flexible arm that could be pressed open and shut with ease. The coiled spring was more than a decorative feature. It provided both tension and resilience, allowing the pin to return to its closed position naturally. This meant that once the point was hooked into the clasp, it stayed locked, preventing accidental opening. The clasp itself was shaped so that the sharp end was not exposed but hidden inside a protective cover. This transformed a potentially hazardous object into something reliable and safe. Within a short period, Hunt realized that he had created not just a variation of a pin but a practical improvement with wide potential use. On April 10, 1849, Hunt secured a patent for his design, officially recording the safety pin as his invention. The patent description emphasized the coiled spring mechanism and the clasped end, the two features that distinguished it from earlier fastening devices. With this new invention, Hunt quickly sold the rights for $400, an amount sufficient to settle his immediate debt but negligible compared to the long-term value of the product. True to his pattern, Hunt did not pursue large-scale manufacturing or marketing. Instead, The rights passed to others who recognized the potential and began producing the safety pin for wider distribution. The spread of the safety pin was rapid. It was inexpensive to make, simple to use, and solved a universal problem. Households adopted it for mending clothes, securing fabrics, and fastening garments temporarily. It found a role in tailoring, in hospitals, in childcare, and in countless small tasks where a reliable fastening was needed. Its design required no complex machinery, and mass production quickly made it available to people of all social classes. What had begun as a personal improvisation became a ubiquitous tool, carried in sewing kits, travel bags, and emergency boxes across the world. The cultural presence of the safety pin grew quietly but steadily. Unlike some inventions that announced themselves with dramatic effect, the safety pin became integrated into ordinary life almost invisibly. Its effectiveness lay in its simplicity. It did not demand attention, yet it was always there when needed, ready to secure a torn seam, a broken strap, or a folded fabric. Over time, it acquired symbolic associations as well, representing quick fixes, resilience, and adaptability. In various contexts, it became a small emblem of solidarity or protest, though its original purpose remained firmly practical. The accidental nature of its invention is part of its enduring fascination. Hunt had not set out to solve the problem of pin safety on a grand scale, nor to revolutionize fastening devices. His motivation was immediate and personal, and his attention to detail in bending a piece of brass wire happened to yield something greater than he anticipated. The safety pin's global success emerged not from deliberate planning but from the recognition that a simple, elegant solution could meet a widespread need. Walter Hunt himself remained a figure of modest fortune, remembered for multiple inventions, including the first practical sewing machine, though he sold that design as well before it reached its full commercial potential. His legacy is not that of a wealthy industrialist but of a creative mind whose quick thinking produced objects that outlasted him. The safety pin, in particular, endures as a testament to his ingenuity. Today, more than a century and a half later, the safety pin remains unchanged in its essential form. While materials and manufacturing processes have improved, the basic coiled spring, clasp, and protected point continue to define it. Its longevity demonstrates the power of a simple design to remain relevant through generations. Few objects so small have achieved such widespread use or sustained such long relevance in everyday life. The safety pin illustrates how an unplanned act, born out of necessity and executed with simplicity, can transform into a permanent fixture of human culture. From a piece of brass wire shaped in the hands of an inventor trying to pay a debt, it became one of the most common objects in households worldwide. Its creation was not the result of grand design but of chance, practicality, and observation, qualities that often lie at the heart of invention. Potato chips. The invention of potato chips is a story that demonstrates how frustration in the kitchen can lead to the creation of an entirely new category of food. It was the middle of the 19th century, and in the United States, restaurants were beginning to adopt more varied menus to satisfy the tastes of an expanding clientele. In Saratoga Springs, New York, there was a resort restaurant run by George Crumb, a chef of Native American and African American heritage who had developed a reputation for his skills with game and fish. Crumb was a talented cook, known for his attention to flavor and presentation, and his establishment attracted wealthy guests from New York City who expected refined dining experiences. Among the most popular items on the menu was fried potatoes, prepared in thick slices and cooked until golden. Potatoes had become an important staple food in America, and variations of fried potatoes were enjoyed widely. Yet one evening in 1853, a dissatisfied customer sent back his portion of fried potatoes, complaining that the slices were too thick and not crisp enough. For a chef, such criticism was not unusual, but Crumb's reaction on this occasion was sharper than usual. Irritated by the repeated complaints, he decided to make a point. He sliced the potatoes as thinly as possible, so thin that they would crisp immediately in the hot oil. He fried them until they became brittle and golden, then sprinkled them with salt before serving them back to the customer. What was intended as a gesture of defiance turned into a culinary success. Instead of rejecting the dish, the customer enjoyed the unusual texture and flavor, praising the crispness that distinguished it from the usual fried potatoes. Other guests became curious, and soon Crumb found himself preparing more of these thin, crunchy slices. The novelty quickly turned into a specialty, and the Saratoga chips, as they came to be known, became a signature dish of the restaurant. Word spread beyond the resort, and visitors carried the idea with them to other parts of the country. For Crumb, the popularity of the chips contributed to his growing reputation as a chef, though he never patented or formally claimed the invention. In the context of 19th-century cuisine, dishes often evolved through shared practice rather than strict ownership. Still, the association of the chips with Saratoga Springs and with Crumb himself remained strong. Over the following decades, the preparation of thin, fried potato slices moved from novelty to common dish, appearing in cookbooks and spreading into home kitchens. The real transformation came with industrialization in the early 20th century. Entrepreneurs recognized that potato chips could be produced on a larger scale, packaged, and sold as a convenient snack food. Factories were established where potatoes were peeled, sliced, fried, salted, and packed in bags or tins for distribution. Advances in food preservation and packaging allowed chips to remain crisp for weeks, expanding their reach far beyond local restaurants. This shift turned what had begun as a spur-of-the-moment response in a kitchen into a product available in grocery stores nationwide. The popularity of potato chips grew rapidly, fueled by their distinctive crunch, salty flavor, and ease of consumption. They became associated with casual gatherings, picnics, and later, with modern advertising campaigns that emphasized enjoyment and indulgence. By the mid-20th century, chips were firmly established as one of the most consumed snack foods in the United States, and soon after in many other countries as well. The accidental nature of their invention remains central to their story. Crumb had not set out to create a new food category, nor to establish a business empire. His intention that evening was to silence a complaining customer, yet the unexpected enjoyment of that dish demonstrated how chance and circumstance often play a role in culinary innovation. The thin slices, once meant as a joke, became a permanent addition to global food culture. Today, potato chips exist in countless variations, with different seasonings, styles of frying, and packaging innovations. Yet the basic concept, thin slices of potato fried until crisp and seasoned with salt, has changed little from the version served in Saratoga Springs in 1853. The enduring appeal lies in the same qualities that first captured attention: the contrast between lightness and crunch, and the savory satisfaction of a simple food transformed by a small change in preparation. The story of potato chips illustrates how the combination of irritation, creativity, and chance can produce outcomes that exceed all expectations. A chef's impulsive decision to prove a point to a guest ended up introducing one of the most recognizable and widely enjoyed snack foods in the world. What began in a single restaurant kitchen now fills shelves in every supermarket, representing a culinary accident that permanently altered eating habits across cultures. Plastic. The emergence of plastic as a material that would reshape modern life began not with a deliberate search for it, but with an effort to solve a practical problem. In the middle of the 19th century, the popularity of billiards was spreading rapidly in Europe and the United States. The balls used in the game were traditionally made of ivory, carved from elephant tusks. As demand increased, so did concern over the scarcity and cost of ivory. Manufacturers announced a prize for anyone who could create a substitute material strong enough to replace it. This incentive attracted the attention of inventors and chemists, who began experimenting with natural substances in search of alternatives. One of those inventors was John Wesley Hyatt, an American who, in the 1860s, began working with cellulose, the organic compound that forms the structure of plant material. Hyatt treated cellulose with camphor, a substance derived from the wood of certain trees, and discovered that the mixture produced a moldable, durable material. This substance, later known as celluloid, could be shaped into sheets or molded into various forms. It proved useful not only for billiard balls but for combs, buttons, collars, and photographic film. While Hyatt had intended to create an ivory replacement, what he produced became the foundation of a new class of synthetic materials. The significance of this discovery was not fully recognized at first. Celluloid was one of the earliest plastics, though the word itself was not yet commonly used. The material could imitate natural substances, such as ivory, tortoiseshell, or horn, at a fraction of the cost. This ability to mimic scarce and expensive materials opened the way to mass production of consumer goods that were previously limited to the wealthy. Everyday objects could now be produced cheaply and in large numbers, transforming consumption patterns and making decorative or functional items widely available. The development of plastics advanced further in the early 20th century. In 1907, Leo Bakelite, a Belgian chemist working in the United States, created Bakelite while searching for a substitute for shellac, a natural resin used in electrical insulation. Bakelite was fully synthetic, created through a reaction between phenol and formaldehyde. Unlike celluloid, which was still derived from plant cellulose, Bakelite had no natural counterpart. It was heat-resistant, electrically insulating, and moldable into stable shapes. These properties made it ideal for electrical equipment, telephones, radios, and countless other products that were beginning to define modern technology. What is striking about these discoveries is the degree to which chance and circumstance influenced their development. Hyatt had not set out to launch a new era of materials science. His work was motivated by a practical contest and an attempt to reduce dependence on ivory. Bakelite, too, was searching for a substitute for a natural resin, not to create a substance that would revolutionize industry. Yet in both cases, the results extended far beyond their original purposes. The materials they created introduced the possibility of replacing not only ivory or shellac but nearly any natural material with synthetic equivalents. As industrial chemistry matured, plastics expanded into new forms and applications. Polymers such as polyethylene, polystyrene, and nylon were developed, each offering unique properties. These materials became essential to packaging, textiles, medicine, and countless aspects of daily life. The ability to tailor chemical structures to produce desired characteristics gave plastics extraordinary versatility. Strength, flexibility, transparency, and resistance to chemicals could all be engineered as needed. The accidental origins of plastics are essential to understanding their cultural and technological impact. The initial search was not for an all-purpose material but for specific substitutes. The broader significance emerged only later, as manufacturers and consumers recognized how these substances could reshape production and consumption. What began as a solution to a shortage of ivory evolved into the foundation of a material world in which synthetics play a dominant role. Today, plastics are present in nearly every environment. In homes, hospitals, vehicles, packaging, and electronic devices. Their advantages are inseparable from the challenges they now pose in terms of waste and environmental impact, but their role in shaping modern civilization remains undeniable. From Hyatt's early experiments with cellulose to Bakelite's synthetic Bakelite, the story of plastic is a testament to how unplanned discoveries can create profound and lasting change. LSD. The story of LSD begins in the early 20th century, when chemists were investigating the properties of ergot, a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. For centuries, ergot had been known for its dangerous effects when consumed in contaminated bread, causing convulsions, hallucinations, and gangrene. At the same time, it had medicinal potential in small doses, particularly for inducing contractions in childbirth and controlling bleeding. Because of this dual nature, ergot became the focus of careful study by pharmaceutical researchers who sought to isolate useful compounds while minimizing harmful effects. In 1938, a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann, working at the pharmaceutical company Sandoz, was exploring ergot alkaloids in the hope of developing new circulatory and respiratory stimulants. During his experiments, he synthesized a compound called lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD-25, being the 25th substance in a series he had created. Initial tests on animals showed little promise, and the compound was set aside without further study. For several years, it remained merely one entry in Hofmann's laboratory notes, overshadowed by other projects that appeared more productive. The story might have ended there, but in 1943 Hofmann decided to re-examine the compound. He later described having a peculiar sense that LSD-25 might hold unusual properties, although at the time there was no scientific reason to pursue it further. While working with the substance, Hoffman accidentally absorbed a small amount through his skin. The effects were striking and wholly unexpected. He experienced altered perceptions, vivid imagery, and a profound shift in consciousness that lasted for hours. Recognizing the significance of what had happened, he prepared for a more controlled experiment. On April 19, 1943, Hoffman ingested a measured dose of LSD, becoming the first person to intentionally experience its effects. What followed was an intense and disorienting journey of perception, marked by visual distortions, heightened sensory experiences, and a sense of altered reality. That day became known in later years as Bicycle Day, because Hoffman, unable to continue working, rode his bicycle home under the influence of the compound. The unusual nature of the experience convinced him that he had discovered something unlike any known substance. Sandoz soon began exploring the potential uses of LSD in psychiatry. The compound was distributed to researchers under the trade name Delicid, with the idea that it might serve as a tool for studying mental illness or as an aid in psychotherapy. For more than a decade, LSD was the subject of serious scientific investigation. Psychiatrists reported that it could help patients confront suppressed emotions or provide insights into the nature of psychosis. Some studies suggested that it might reduce dependence on alcohol or relieve certain forms of anxiety. The accidental discovery of LSD's effects thus opened a new field of research into the chemistry of the mind. Unlike sedatives or stimulants, LSD did not simply dull or excite the nervous system. Instead, it appeared to fundamentally alter perception, suggesting that brain chemistry could directly shape consciousness. This idea was groundbreaking, offering new ways of thinking about how mental states were connected to molecules. For researchers, LSD became a lens through which to study the relationship between brain chemistry and subjective experience. Although the later history of LSD became intertwined with cultural movements and controversies, its origin remained rooted in a moment of laboratory accident and curiosity. Hoffman had not set out to discover a psychoactive substance, and his company had no initial interest in such effects. The compound's path from obscure ergot derivative to subject of worldwide attention illustrates how scientific exploration can yield results far removed from the original intention. The influence of LSD on medicine and neuroscience was profound, even if many of the early hopes for therapeutic use did not develop as expected. It challenged researchers to consider how chemical compounds could affect thought, perception, and emotion, contributing to the rise of modern psychopharmacology. At the same time, the very intensity of its effects ensured that it would never be a typical medicine. Its role in scientific and cultural history remains inseparable from the chance circumstances of its rediscovery and the unique vision of the chemist who first recognized its significance. Saccharin. The story of saccharin, the world's first artificial sweetener, begins in the late 19th century at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. In 1879, a young chemist named Konstantin Fahlberg was conducting research on coal tar derivatives under the supervision of the professor Ira Remsen. At the time, coal tar, a thick black byproduct of the coal gas industry, was a valuable source of chemicals for dyes, medicines, and laboratory reagents. The work was part of a broader effort to expand the possibilities of organic chemistry by isolating and characterizing new compounds. Fahlberg spent long hours in the laboratory, handling numerous substances and writing down observations. One evening, after a day of particularly intense work, he left the lab and sat down to dinner. While eating, he noticed that the bread he picked up had an unusually sweet taste. At first, he assumed it was the food itself. But as the meal continued, he realized that everything he touched or tasted seemed to carry the same sweetness. Soon, he understood that the taste was not coming from the food, but from his own hands. Some substance from the laboratory had adhered to his skin and transferred to the bread. Intrigued, he returned to the laboratory to retrace his steps. Through careful investigation, Fahlberg identified the compound responsible. It was an oxidized derivative of toluenesulfonamide, one of the substances he had been working with. This crystalline compound had an extraordinarily sweet flavor, hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. It had no noticeable nutritional value, and it passed through the body without being metabolized. Fahlberg recognized immediately that this accidental discovery could have great potential. He named the substance saccharin, derived from the Latin word saccharum, meaning sugar. At first, its use was limited to laboratory curiosity, but Fahlberg soon saw an opportunity for broader application. Without the knowledge or involvement of his academic mentor Remsen, he filed patents and began to develop saccharin commercially. This decision created tension between the two men, since Remsen believed that the discovery belonged to scientific knowledge rather than private profit. Their relationship deteriorated, but Fahlberg pursued the business venture vigorously. By the 1880s and 1890s, saccharin entered the market as a sugar substitute. It attracted particular attention among individuals with diabetes, for whom sugar consumption was dangerous. Doctors prescribed saccharin as a safe alternative, since it provided sweetness without raising blood sugar levels. In a period when treatment options for diabetes were extremely limited, saccharin became not just a convenience but a practical aid in managing the disease. Its popularity grew further during times of scarcity. During World War I and again during World War II, sugar shortages led to increased demand for substitutes. Saccharin became widely available, finding its way into beverages, baked goods, and household use. Its low cost and stability made it attractive not only for medical purposes, but also for ordinary consumers who sought alternatives to sugar. By the mid-20th century, saccharin was one of the most widely consumed artificial sweeteners in the world. The path of saccharin, however, was not without controversy. As its use expanded, questions were raised about its safety. In the early 20th century, debates arose in the United States about whether saccharin should be allowed in food. Even President Theodore Roosevelt became involved, defending saccharin after it was criticized by government regulators, declaring that he considered it safe and useful. Over the decades, studies alternately questioned and supported its safety profile, leading to periodic attempts to ban or restrict it. Yet despite these debates, saccharin retained its place in the marketplace, largely because consumers valued its benefits, and because no conclusive evidence proved it harmful at typical levels of consumption. The accidental nature of its discovery remained at the center of its story. Fahlberg had not been searching for a sweetener, nor had he been conducting experiments related to taste or nutrition. His work focused on chemical reactions of coal tar derivatives, an area far removed from food science. The sweetness that clung to his bread that evening was an unplanned encounter, one that depended as much on chance as on deliberate investigation. Saccharin's impact extended beyond its immediate uses. It introduced the very idea that sweetness could be created artificially, separate from sugar and from natural sources. This concept paved the way for an entire industry of artificial and later low-calorie sweeteners. Substances such as cyclamate, aspartame, and sucralose would follow in the 20th century, each building on the precedent that saccharin had established. The cultural and economic consequences were significant. Diets changed, industries shifted, and the range of consumer choices expanded dramatically. Looking back, the discovery of saccharin stands as a vivid example of how unexpected events in a laboratory can transform daily life on a global scale. What began as an unnoticed compound among many others in coal tar chemistry became a product consumed by millions, shaping both medical treatment and everyday diets. Its persistence, despite controversy, reflects the power of accidental discoveries to endure and to redefine habits across generations. Vulcanite. The story of Vulcanite begins in the early 19th century, during a period of rapid industrial and technological growth. Natural rubber, derived from the latex of certain tropical plants, had already attracted significant interest. When first brought to Europe in the 18th century, rubber fascinated scientists and manufacturers with its unusual properties. It was elastic, waterproof, and resilient. Small objects such as erasers and waterproof coats were among the earliest uses. Yet despite its promise, natural rubber presented serious problems. It became sticky and unpleasantly soft in heat, while in cold weather it hardened and cracked. These limitations prevented it from being useful for machinery, durable goods, or many industrial applications. Manufacturers sought a way to stabilize rubber, but progress was slow. Charles Goodyear, an American inventor, dedicated his life to solving this problem. His efforts were marked by hardship, poverty, and persistence. Goodyear experimented with different additives, heating methods, and treatments, searching for a way to make rubber durable and resistant to temperature changes. Many of his trials ended in failure. Accounts describe him boiling rubber with various substances, coating it with different powders, and trying to alter its texture through countless experiments. He faced financial ruin repeatedly, and his family lived in difficult conditions as he pursued his goal. Yet he remained convinced that a solution was possible. The breakthrough came in 1839, not through deliberate design but through accident. While working with a mixture of rubber and sulfur, Goodyear accidentally dropped some of the material onto a hot stove. To his surprise, instead of melting into a sticky mass, the rubber became firm, elastic, and resistant to further heat. The surface had charred, but the material retained flexibility and strength. This was unlike anything he had seen before. Through further experimentation, Goodyear realized that heating rubber with sulfur transformed its internal structure in a way that stabilized it. He had discovered the process that would come to be known as vulcanization. The resulting material, Vulcanite, was durable, resilient, and far more versatile than untreated rubber. It could withstand changes in temperature without losing its essential properties. This made it suitable for a wide range of applications that had previously been impossible. Vulcanized rubber was soon used for shoes, waterproof clothing, machine belts, hoses, and gaskets. Its elasticity made it ideal for tires, which later became central to the growth of bicycles and automobiles. Without vulcanization, the rise of modern transportation and industry would have been far more limited. Beyond its industrial uses, Vulcanite also found a place in everyday objects. When hardened, it could be polished and used as a substitute for ivory, tortoiseshell, or horn, much like celluloid in later years. It was shaped into combs, buttons, fountain pen bodies, pipe stems, and even jewelry. Its ability to mimic natural materials at lower cost gave it both practical and decorative value. In dentistry, Vulcanite became important as a base for dentures, offering a stable and affordable alternative to earlier materials. Goodyear himself faced difficulties in profiting from his discovery. He secured patents, but legal disputes, imitations, and the scale of industrial adoption meant that he gained little financial reward. He died in 1860, heavily in debt, though his name later became honored in the tire industry and associated permanently with rubber. His persistence, despite years of struggle, became a symbol of inventive determination. Yet the accidental nature of the discovery cannot be overlooked. The key transformation was not the result of planned success but of chance. When a sample touched a hot stove and revealed its hidden potential, the significance of Vulcanite lies not only in its material properties but also in the way it changed industrial possibilities. It demonstrated that natural substances could be chemically transformed into materials with new and valuable characteristics. This concept, which would later underpin the rise of plastics and synthetic chemistry, was still novel in Goodyear's time. Vulcanization showed that nature's limitations could be overcome through chemical processes, expanding the range of what industry could achieve. By the late 19th century, Vulcanite was ubiquitous. It was present in homes, workshops, factories, and personal possessions. Its role in the development of modern infrastructure was profound, enabling machinery to run smoothly, transportation to expand, and consumer products to diversify. The global demand for rubber plantations grew, particularly in South America and later in Asia, linking the discovery to wider economic and social changes. The story of Vulcanite illustrates how persistence, accident, and chemical transformation converged to create a material that reshaped daily life. Goodyear's long struggle, marked by poverty and determination, combined with the unplanned event of overheated rubber and sulfur, resulted in a discovery that became indispensable to modern civilization. From tires to tools, from household goods to medical applications, Vulcanite stood at the foundation of a material revolution, its accidental birth ensuring its place in history as one of the most influential discoveries of the industrial age. Insulin. The discovery of insulin stands as one of the most significant medical breakthroughs of the 20th century, and its story is closely tied to both persistence in research and the role of accident in guiding scientific progress. Before its discovery, Diabetes mellitus was a devastating disease with few effective treatments. Patients, often children or young adults, faced a rapid decline once symptoms appeared. The best physicians could offer was a strict diet that prolonged life for a short while, but the disease remained inevitably fatal. The pancreas had been a focus of study since the 19th century, when scientists identified its connection to digestion and to metabolic disorders. In 1869, a German medical student, Paul Langerhans, discovered small clusters of cells within the pancreas, later named the islets of Langerhans. Their function, however, was unknown. Toward the end of the century, experiments showed that removing the pancreas from dogs caused severe diabetes, marked by extreme thirst, frequent urination, and rapid weight loss. These results suggested that the pancreas secreted some substance essential for regulating sugar in the body, but the substance itself could not yet be isolated. In the early 1920s, research in this area was renewed at the University of Toronto. Frederick Banting, a young Canadian surgeon, had developed an idea that the pancreatic islets might produce a hormone controlling blood sugar. He approached Professor John MacLeod, an established physiologist, for support. MacLeod was skeptical but allowed Banting to use laboratory facilities and assigned Charles Best, a medical student, to assist him. Together they began experiments on dogs, removing their pancreases to induce diabetes and then attempting to extract the active substance from pancreatic tissue to reverse the condition. Their initial efforts were crude, involving ground-up tissue and simple filtration. Yet, in July 1921, they observed something remarkable. Extracts from the pancreas, when injected into diabetic dogs, lowered blood sugar levels and improved their condition. Though far from pure, the preparation clearly contained the long-sought substance. Encouraged, Banting and Best continued refining the method, eventually with the assistance of the biochemist James Collip, who joined the team to improve the extraction process. Collip's expertise allowed them to produce a more purified form that could be safely tested in humans. The first human trial took place in January 1922. Leonard Thompson, a 14-year-old boy suffering from severe diabetes, was near death despite strict dieting. He received an injection of the pancreatic extract. The initial dose produced only limited improvement, but after further purification, a second dose dramatically lowered his blood sugar, restored his strength, and prolonged his life. The results were undeniable. The substance from the islets of Langerhans, which they now called insulin, could treat diabetes. What made this discovery partly accidental was the way it emerged from a mixture of persistence, intuition, and unforeseen results. Banting was not an experienced researcher in endocrinology. His idea came from reading medical literature and making a bold assumption about the pancreas. His access to facilities was due more to MacLeod's willingness to take a chance than to established proof. The success of the experiments depended on the collaboration of individuals with different skills, and the critical purification step was achieved only through Collip's expertise. Without these convergences, the work might have failed or remained incomplete. The impact of insulin was immediate and profound. Within months, more patients received treatment, and the transformation was dramatic. Children who had been wasting away gained weight, regained energy, and resumed normal lives. Hospitals that had been places of despair for diabetes patients became sites of recovery. For the first time, a fatal disease had a reliable medical treatment. The University of Toronto licensed production to pharmaceutical companies to ensure widespread availability, and insulin rapidly became recognized as one of the greatest medical achievements of the era. Recognition followed swiftly. In 1923, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded to Banting and MacLeod, though controversy surrounded the decision. Banting felt that Best deserved equal credit and shared his portion of the prize money with him. MacLeod, in turn, shared his portion with Collip. These disputes reflected the complex teamwork behind the discovery, where no single individual could claim complete ownership. Insulin's story also illustrates how an accidental element of discovery can change the trajectory of medicine. The substance itself had been theorized for decades, but repeated failures to isolate it had discouraged many researchers. Banting's persistence, combined with the fortunate combination of colleagues and circumstances, produced a result that others had missed. The accidental discovery of a usable preparation was less about one moment of chance and more about a chain of unlikely successes that converged at the right time. Over the years, insulin production advanced from crude extracts of animal pancreases to purified forms, and eventually to synthetic human insulin created through biotechnology. Yet the essential breakthrough of 1921 to 1922 remains the foundation of all subsequent progress. It transformed diabetes from a fatal disease into a manageable condition, saving millions of lives. The discovery of insulin remains a clear example of how accidents, intuition, and persistence can combine to yield one of the most significant contributions to human health. A chance insight in a young surgeon's mind, a skeptical professor's willingness to provide resources, the cooperation of skilled colleagues, and the dramatic results of early trials together produced a discovery that permanently changed medicine. Popsicle. The story of the popsicle is unusual among inventions that changed daily life, because it was not born in a laboratory or workshop but in the hands of a child experimenting at home. At the beginning of the 20th century, flavored sodas were becoming popular in the United States. Syrups mixed with carbonated water were sold at stands and pharmacies, offering a refreshing taste that appealed to adults and children alike. In Oakland, California, in 1905, an 11-year-old boy named Frank Epperson decided to mix powdered soda flavoring with water in a cup. Like many children, he enjoyed imitating the trends he saw around him, and his mixture was part of that playful exploration. One evening, after stirring the sugary liquid with a wooden stick, Frank left the cup outside on the porch overnight. The temperature dropped unexpectedly, and by morning the mixture had frozen solid. When he returned to it, he discovered that the wooden stick was now embedded in the frozen treat. What had started as a simple drink had transformed into something entirely new, a portable piece of flavored ice that could be held and eaten without a spoon or glass. This accident delighted him, and he began making more of them, at first only for himself and friends. Over the following years, Frank continued to prepare his frozen creations for neighborhood children. They became a small local novelty, sometimes called Popsicles, after his own name. For a long time, however, it remained simply a personal amusement. Frank grew up, started a family, and took on regular work. Yet the memory of his frozen discovery lingered, and eventually he decided that it might have broader potential. In 1923, nearly 2 decades after the first frozen cup, Epperson applied for a patent. By then, refrigeration technology was more common, and frozen treats had become more practical to produce and distribute. He formally named his creation the Popsicle, a shortened and more appealing variation that suggested a lollipop made of ice. With a patent in place, he began to sell the Popsicle at fairs and amusement parks, where it quickly attracted attention. The combination of bright flavors, portability, and novelty made it an ideal treat for children and families. The success grew rapidly, and soon Popsicle rights were sold and licensed to larger companies that could mass-produce and distribute the frozen snacks nationwide. Within a few years, Popsicles were available in multiple flavors and were becoming a staple of American summers. The frozen treat, born of an accident on a cold night, entered mass culture as one of the most recognizable desserts of the 20th century. The significance of the Popsicle lies not only in its popularity but also in the way it represents how everyday accidents can lead to enduring innovations. Unlike scientific discoveries that required laboratories or industrial experimentation, the Popsicle emerged from the simple act of leaving a cup outside. It showed how a child's play could intersect with chance to produce something that resonated with broader society. Over time, the Popsicle expanded into countless variations. Twin sticks allowed the treat to be broken and shared. New flavors were introduced, reflecting changing tastes and advances in food coloring and flavoring. Later, the Popsicle brand itself became part of a larger frozen dessert industry, including ice creams and other confections. Yet the essential idea remained unchanged. Flavored liquid frozen around a stick, easy to hold and refreshing to eat. The story of the Popsicle also reflects the broader social changes of the early 20th century. With the spread of refrigeration and the rise of mass production, foods that were once seasonal or local could be standardized and distributed widely. The Popsicle fit perfectly into this pattern, offering a product that combined novelty, convenience, and pleasure at low cost. Its appeal to children made it a cultural icon, reinforced by advertising that linked it to fun, leisure, and summer days. For Frank Epperson, the invention did not bring vast wealth, as the rights passed into corporate hands, but his accidental discovery remained his legacy. He himself acknowledged that the idea had originated not from planning but from the simple oversight of leaving a mixture outdoors on a cold night. The enduring popularity of the Popsicle is a reminder of how small moments of chance can ripple outward to create traditions and habits embraced by millions. Today, the Popsicle remains a fixture of summer culture in many countries. Though flavors, branding, and production methods have evolved, the essential experience of enjoying frozen flavored ice on a stick is the same as it was in 1905. From a child's porch in Oakland to global recognition, the Popsicle stands as a testament to how accidents in everyday life can leave lasting marks on culture and industry. Synthetic dyes. The story of synthetic dyes begins in the mid-19th century, a period when chemistry was undergoing rapid transformation. For centuries, humans had relied on natural sources to color fabrics. Plants, minerals, and even insects provided pigments, but the process was labor-intensive, expensive, and limited in range. Brilliant purples, reds, and blues were symbols of wealth and power because they were so difficult to produce. This situation changed dramatically in 1856, when a young student named William Henry Perkin made a mistake that reshaped industry, science, and fashion. Perkin was only 18 years old and studying under the well-known chemist August Wilhelm Hofmann in London. At the time, one of the major challenges in chemistry was the quest to synthesize quinine. Quinine was a vital medicine used to treat malaria, and its natural extraction from the bark of the cinchona tree was costly and insufficient to meet global demand. If a chemist could find a way to produce quinine artificially, it would be a breakthrough with enormous value. Perkin devoted his early research to this problem, working with coal tar derivatives in a small laboratory he had set up in his home. In one of his experiments, he tried to oxidize aniline, a substance derived from coal tar, hoping that the reaction might yield quinine. Instead of producing a usable medicine, the process resulted in a dark, sticky residue. At first glance, it appeared to be another failed attempt, nothing more than a tarry waste. However, Perkin noticed something unusual when he cleaned his glassware. The residue left behind a striking purple stain, far more vivid than most natural dyes he had seen. Curious, he began testing its ability to color fabrics. To his surprise, silk absorbed the color beautifully, producing a bright and long-lasting purple. This accidental discovery revealed something new, a synthetic dye that could outperform traditional natural sources. Perkin had stumbled upon mauveine, also known as aniline purple. It was not quinine, but it was a product with its own potential. Recognizing this, Perkin quickly shifted his attention away from medicine and toward the commercial possibilities of his discovery. With the help of his family, he set up a factory to produce the dye on a larger scale. The timing of this invention was critical. In the mid-19th century, the textile industry was booming, driven by industrialization and global trade. Bright, affordable colors were in high demand. The natural source of purple, derived from the murex snail, was incredibly rare and had historically been associated with royalty. Perkin's mauve offered a brilliant alternative that could be produced cheaply and in significant quantities. It immediately caught the attention of fashion houses and spread rapidly through Europe. Clothing dyed with mauve became a trend, and the color itself entered the cultural vocabulary as a symbol of modernity and progress. Perkin's discovery also triggered a revolution in chemistry. Synthetic dyes became a new field of research and industry, with chemists racing to create more colors and more stable compounds. Within a few decades, a full spectrum of synthetic dyes was available, transforming not only fashion but also printing, art, and manufacturing. Germany in particular became a global leader in dye chemistry, with companies like BASF and Bayer rising from this foundation to dominate chemical production in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The impact of synthetic dyes extended beyond aesthetics. The research into dye chemistry contributed to the development of organic chemistry as a discipline. The techniques and knowledge developed in the pursuit of new colors laid the groundwork for the synthesis of drugs, plastics, and other modern materials. In this way, the accidental creation of a purple stain on a young chemist's glassware helped launch entire scientific fields. William Perkin himself received recognition for his work during his lifetime. Although he never succeeded in synthesizing quinine, his mauve dye became one of the most influential accidental discoveries in industrial history. The anniversary of his discovery in 1856 was later celebrated as a landmark in chemistry, highlighting how unexpected results can open entirely new directions. Today, the legacy of synthetic dyes is visible in nearly every aspect of modern life. The clothes people wear, the inks in books and newspapers, the colors in packaging, and even certain medical and scientific applications all depend on dyes derived from that tradition. What began as an accident in a modest London laboratory expanded into a global industry that permanently altered human culture and technology. The story of synthetic dyes demonstrates how accidents in research can sometimes provide more valuable results than the original goals. Perkin's failure to make quinine did not mark the end of his work, but the beginning of something far larger. His curiosity and willingness to test an unexpected residue revealed possibilities hidden within a mistake. From that moment, the world entered an era where colors could be created, modified, and standardized at will, no longer bound by the limitations of natural sources. From the purple silk of Victorian fashion to the vast chemical industries of the 20th century, the invention of synthetic dyes shows how a simple accident can shape history in ways no one could have predicted. Bakelite. At the beginning of the 20th century, the modern world was rapidly changing. Electricity, telephones, and new machines were entering daily life, and industries searched for materials that could meet the demands of mass production. Traditional substances such as wood, ivory, and shellac had long been used in manufacturing, but they carried limitations. Shellac, for instance, was brittle and difficult to shape, while ivory and natural resins were expensive and unsustainable. It was within this context that a Belgian-born chemist, Leo Bakelite, working in New York, made a discovery that would lay the foundation for the age of plastics. Bakelite was already a skilled chemist and inventor. Before his most famous achievement, he had created photographic paper that could be developed under artificial light, which he sold to the Eastman Kodak Company for a substantial sum. This success gave him both financial security and the freedom to pursue new lines of research. He turned his attention to synthetic materials, focusing particularly on resins. At the time, phenol and formaldehyde were known substances, and earlier chemists had experimented with combining them, but the results were inconsistent. The challenge was to control the reaction and produce a stable, moldable material. In 1907, while working in his private laboratory, Bakelite achieved what others had failed to do. By applying heat and pressure to a mixture of phenol and formaldehyde, he managed to create a hard, durable substance that was not only resistant to heat, but also did not conduct electricity. This new material, which he named Bakelite, was unlike anything that had come before. Unlike natural resins or shellac, Bakelite could be molded into almost any shape before hardening into a stable form. It could be mass-produced, dyed in various colors, and adapted to countless uses. The significance of Bakelite became clear almost immediately. Its resistance to heat and electricity made it ideal for the rapidly expanding electrical and telecommunication industries. It was soon used for light switches, telephone casings, and radio housings. Its durability meant that it could replace natural materials in buttons, combs, and jewelry. Because it could be easily shaped and polished, it also became popular in consumer goods, offering an affordable alternative to luxury materials like ivory and amber. What distinguished Bakelite from earlier substances was not just its properties but its role as the first truly synthetic plastic. While other natural materials could be processed or modified, Bakelite was entirely human-made, the product of controlled chemical reactions rather than extraction from nature. This made it a landmark in material science, opening the door to the vast world of plastics that would define the 20th century. Bakelite himself promoted Bakelite as the material of 1,000 uses. This description was not an exaggeration. By the 1920s and 1930s, Bakelite was being used in household goods, automobiles, and industrial equipment. It was heat-resistant, insulating, lightweight, and affordable. It became a symbol of modernity, associated with streamlined design and the possibilities of new technology. Radios with Bakelite casings, for example, became icons of the interwar period, combining functional utility with a sleek, futuristic look. The cultural impact of Bakelite was profound. It allowed mass production of items that had once been limited to the wealthy. Everyday people could now own objects that were durable, stylish, and modern. In this sense, Bakelite helped democratize consumer goods, bridging the gap between luxury and affordability. At the same time, it contributed to the shift toward a disposable culture, where synthetic materials replaced traditional ones and abundance became a defining feature of industrial society. From a scientific perspective, Bakelite's invention marked the beginning of polymer chemistry as a transformative field. Chemists realized that controlled reactions could produce entirely new classes of materials with properties not found in nature. This insight fueled decades of innovation, leading to the development of nylon, polyester, polyethylene, and countless other plastics that became integral to modern life. The lineage of all these materials traces back to Bakelin's discovery in 1907. Bakelin himself was widely celebrated for his work. He received numerous awards and honors, and his invention secured his reputation as one of the most influential chemists of his time. Yet, like many inventors, he could not have foreseen the full consequences of his creation. Bakelite was the first step in what would become both a triumph and a challenge of modern industry. The rise of synthetic plastics, which brought extraordinary convenience and innovation but also long-term environmental concerns. Despite these later complexities, the importance of Bakelite in its own time cannot be overstated. It gave industries the ability to shape and mold the modern world, quite literally, and it became inseparable from the image of progress in the early 20th century. The accident of combining heat, pressure, phenol, and formaldehyde in just the right way gave birth to a material that embodied the spirit of a new age. Today, Bakelite itself has become a collectible valued for its historical role and its distinctive aesthetic. Jewelry, radios, and household items made of Bakelite are preserved as artifacts of the early plastic era. They remind us not only of the material's practical uses, but also of its cultural symbolism. Bakelite was more than a new substance. It was a turning point that changed how humans interacted with materials, industries, and design. The story of Bakelite shows how a single discovery can reshape multiple aspects of society at once. From laboratories to factories, from households to fashion, Bakelin's invention signaled the beginning of the plastic age, an era that still defines the material world today. Champagne. The invention of champagne, the sparkling wine most closely associated with celebration and luxury, was not the result of a carefully planned experiment but of a series of accidents and gradual refinements in winemaking. Its origins lie in the Champagne region of northeastern France, an area where viticulture dates back to Roman times. For centuries, the region's cold climate and chalky soil produced wines that were valued locally but struggled to compete with those from warmer areas such as Burgundy. The distinctive feature that would eventually set Champagne apart, its bubbles, was at first considered a flaw. In the 17th century, winemakers in Champagne faced a recurring problem. They produced wines that were bottled during the cooler months. But when spring arrived and temperatures rose, dormant yeasts inside the bottles would awaken. This renewed fermentation released carbon dioxide, which had nowhere to escape in the sealed containers. The result was a sparkling wine, but one that often burst its fragile glass bottles under pressure. Early records describe cellars filled with exploding bottles, a hazard that earned the nickname the Devil's Wine. Far from being celebrated, this sparkling quality was initially feared and considered evidence of poor craftsmanship. Over time, however, perceptions began to change. Some drinkers found the effervescent wine delightful, enjoying its lively bubbles and refreshing character. In particular, the English market proved receptive. English merchants imported wines from Champagne and discovered that the sparkling versions had a unique charm. Advances in glassmaking in England also allowed for stronger bottles that could withstand the pressure of carbonation, making it easier to preserve this accidental characteristic. One of the most famous figures associated with Champagne is Dom Pierre Perignon, a Benedictine monk who worked as cellar master at the Abbey of Hautevillers in the late 17th century. Though later legends credited him with inventing champagne, his role was more complex. Dom Perignon sought to improve the still wines of the region, focusing on blending grapes to achieve balance and quality. He did not deliberately create sparkling wine, but his methods of careful selection and blending contributed to the refinement of champagne production. The association of his name with the drink reflects the broader process of experimentation and adaptation that characterized the region during this period. By the 18th century, champagne houses began to emerge, dedicated to producing sparkling wine as a distinct product. Families such as Moët, Cliquot, and Ruinart established brands that would become globally recognized. Madame Cliquot, in particular, played a crucial role in improving production techniques. She introduced the practice of riddling, in which bottles were gradually tilted and rotated to collect sediment in the neck, allowing for its removal without losing the carbonation. This innovation made champagne clearer, more stable, and more appealing to consumers. As techniques improved, champagne transformed from a local curiosity into an international symbol of sophistication. Its association with royalty and the aristocracy further elevated its status. In courts across Europe, champagne became the drink of choice for celebrations and banquets, its bubbles seen as a mark of elegance and festivity. Over time, it spread beyond royal circles to the wider public, carried by trade, advertising, and the growing culture of leisure in the 19th century. The industrial age expanded champagne's reach even further. Better control of fermentation, improved glass bottles, and standardized corks allowed producers to deliver consistent quality on a large scale. By the late 19th century, champagne was firmly established as a global luxury product, exported widely and celebrated in literature, art, and advertising. Its accidental origin as an unstable and unpredictable wine had given way to precise methods that balanced tradition with science. The cultural meaning of champagne grew alongside its technical refinement. More than just a drink, it became a symbol of achievement, celebration, and modern life. Its sparkling character mirrored the excitement and dynamism of industrial society, while its exclusivity tied it to images of wealth and refinement. The very act of opening a bottle, with the distinctive pop of the cork and the rush of bubbles, became a ritual associated with joy and success. From a scientific perspective, the accidental discovery of sparkling wine in champagne illustrates how environmental factors, cold winters, springtime warmth, and yeast behavior, can shape human traditions. What began as an unpredictable problem of secondary fermentation turned into one of the most carefully managed and celebrated processes in winemaking. The lesson is clear. Accidents in nature, once understood and refined, can give rise to enduring cultural practices. Today, champagne continues to occupy a unique place in global culture. Protected by strict regulations, only sparkling wine from the Champagne region may legally bear the name. It remains linked with weddings, New Year's Eve, victories, and milestones. Its identity inseparable from celebration itself. Yet behind this cultural role lies a story of accident, adaptation, and persistence. The sparkling wine that once frightened winemakers with exploding bottles has become a symbol of joy recognized around the world. Rayon. The invention of rayon belongs to the larger story of humanity's search for new materials at the intersection of nature and industry. For centuries, silk had been one of the most prized textiles in the world. Its sheen, softness, and strength made it a symbol of luxury, but it was expensive and dependent on labor-intensive production from silkworms. As industrial society expanded in the 19th century, scientists and manufacturers sought an artificial alternative that could imitate silk's qualities while being more affordable and available in larger quantities. The result, achieved partly by accident and partly by persistent experimentation, was rayon, the first man-made fiber. The earliest steps toward rayon came in France in the mid-19th century. In 1838, a chemist named Anselme Payen identified cellulose as a key component of plant cell walls. This discovery opened the possibility of transforming natural plant material into new substances. Later, in the 1850s, the French industrialist Hilaire de Chardonnay worked on experiments to create a silk substitute. His motivation was practical. An outbreak of silkworm disease had devastated production in Europe, causing a shortage and rising prices. Chardonnay believed that cellulose, abundant in wood and cotton, could be chemically modified to form threads similar to silk. Through experimentation, Chardonnay developed a method of dissolving cellulose in a solution of nitric acid and alcohol, producing a substance that could be extruded through fine holes to create filaments. These threads, once hardened, had a silky appearance and texture. He called the product Chardonnay silk, and in 1889, he presented it at the Paris exhibition, where it attracted widespread attention. The public marveled at its beauty and resemblance to natural silk, seeing in it the promise of a new era of textiles. Yet the invention was not without its flaws. Chardonnay's process relied on nitrocellulose, a compound that was highly flammable. Fabrics made from his artificial silk were dangerously unstable, posing serious risks. There are recorded instances of garments catching fire easily, which limited the practicality of his invention. Despite this, his work demonstrated that artificial fibers could be produced from natural cellulose, laying the foundation for future refinements. In the years that followed, chemists and manufacturers in France, Britain, and the United States continued to explore safer and more efficient methods. By the early 20th century, improved processes replaced the unstable nitrocellulose with more reliable techniques, such as the viscose process. This involved treating cellulose with caustic soda and carbon disulfide to produce a viscous solution that could be spun into fibers. The resulting material was not only safer but also versatile, allowing large-scale industrial production. It was during this period that the name Rayon was adopted, reflecting both its artificial origins and its similarity to natural fibers. Rayon quickly gained popularity as an affordable alternative to silk. It could be woven into smooth, lustrous fabrics used in clothing, upholstery, and other textiles. During the early 20th century, it became especially important for the fashion industry, making garments that once belonged to the wealthy accessible to wider segments of society. Its adaptability also made it valuable in industrial applications, from tire cords to medical supplies. The invention of Rayon illustrates how accidents and setbacks can lead to progress. Chardonnay's initial process, though dangerous, revealed the potential of cellulose as a source of fibers. The accidents of flammable clothing highlighted the need for safer methods, pushing chemists to refine their techniques. What began as a flawed attempt to replace silk eventually produced a material that reshaped industries and consumer culture. Rayon also played a key role in the broader development of polymer and fiber chemistry. It was the first step toward fully synthetic fibers such as nylon and polyester, which emerged in the 20th century. While rayon itself is semi-synthetic, derived from natural cellulose but chemically transformed, it opened the path to the entirely man-made fibers that would later dominate global textiles. Culturally, rayon symbolized the democratization of luxury. Fabrics with the appearance of silk could now be purchased by ordinary people, reflecting broader social changes in which mass production brought formerly exclusive goods within reach of the middle class. It also reflected the growing power of chemistry to transform not only industry but also everyday life, altering how people dressed, decorated their homes, and conceived of modernity. Today, rayon remains in use worldwide, valued for its softness, drape, and versatility. Although newer synthetic fibers have surpassed it in some applications, rayon retains a place in fashion and textiles, bridging the worlds of natural and artificial. Its story reminds us that innovation often emerges through unexpected paths, through accidents, imperfect experiments, and gradual refinement. From silkworm shortages to laboratory mishaps, from unstable flammable fabrics to stable industrial fibers, Rayon's journey shows how human ingenuity turns challenges into opportunities. The shimmering fabrics that once amazed crowds in Paris stand as a testament to how accidents in science can shape culture, industry, and daily life for generations. Ending. Thank you for watching this journey through inventions that changed the world by accident. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your ideas and impressions are always valuable. And if you think your friends would enjoy these stories too, share this video with them. It helps the channel grow and keeps new content coming.